Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often.
The Sol system is still blockaded, yet something is clearly wrong with the primitives from Earth,
announced High Elder Solivar, a reptilian speaking from his chair at a circular table in a dark meeting room.
Humanity has selected a novice warrior for today's life or death contest. Can any of the respectable ones understand why they would make such a stupid decision? Why can't they just stay contained in their world and play our deadly game like they're supposed to?
From the comfort of his own chair, Ektol's long, fluffy ears captured Solivar's words with little interest. His silken black fur draped over his muscular frame like a royal cloak, each strand catching the dim light of the chamber and reflecting it in muted shades of silver. Unlike the other council members, who leaned forward eagerly, Ektol reclined with indifference, his crimson eyes half-lidded beneath heavy brows. The other two species of this alliance seemed to take pleasure in playing games and observing the fates of the primitives confined to their worlds, but Ektol, and his own species, were different. They only cared about the original purpose of these duels, an excuse to eliminate any potential warrior species that might become strong enough to compete with the Alliance, all while pretending to their citizens that those species actually had a chance. He personally found that ancient arrangement ridiculous. Their citizens might be entertained by the fights, their military might enjoy the pay from the decades-long blockades, and they might even feel better about themselves when a species lost and the joint power of their alliance was used to erase them from the galaxy. But deep down, they all knew those young species had no chance whatsoever to win, that the whole tournament was just a convoluted arrangement to exterminate the competition. Hypocrisy. The cold truth was that the number of victories of a primitive species didn't matter. The blockade would never end, and they would win a standard decade to prepare another champion. And usually that was all they did, stopping every scientific advance and focusing all their energy in producing another victory that would win them another standard decade. A poisonous cycle that would inevitably lead to their deaths. Ektol closed his red eyes, letting all discussion about the humans and their inexperienced recruit champion flow from Elder Solivar and Crinaro as he entered his inner world. At least in this place, the cold truth of the universe was accepted in its raw form. The universe was a dark forest, and any new civilization they found would just be erased in the worst way possible. A way that was long, convoluted, and that left a spark of hope alive in the core of those doomed primitives.
Ektol, are you sleeping through this momentous occasion?
Solivar's loud voice shattered Ektol's mental refuge, forcing his red eyes to snap open. His gaze landed on Solivar as the reptilian continued.
How can you rest when the two fighters are about to enter the stage? Look.
A scaled claw jabbed toward the virtual reality projection on the center of the table, where spectators were filling the massive arena by the thousands. The projection was the result of sensory manipulation, not a hologram but a complete immersion that engaged all their neural pathways through their implanted translators. The roar of the crowd vibrated through the table's surface, creating a tactile sensation that complemented the visual spectacle. Ektol could almost smell the alien sweat and excitement, a phantom sensory input that his brain constructed from memory. Crinaro, a Sargok with a transparent body that revealed living internal organs arranged inside him, joined Solivar's criticism. His voice was liquid and melodic, a clear contrast to Solivar's guttural bark.
How can you be so uninterested in the fight of the first species that might force our hand? If they win for a sixth time, we may need to break our own rules and end this blockage with cleansing fire. Doesn't that concern you in the slightest?
Through the translucent membrane of Crinaro's outer layer, complex circulatory systems carried numerous fluids throughout his body, creating patterns that shifted with his emotions, currently displaying a mixture of excitement and irritation as swirling amber eddies. His three-lobed brain activated under the skull, the subtle movements visible even from across the table. Ektol straightened in his chair, the plush material yielding with a soft creak. His ears flicked forward in annoyance, and he replied to both at once, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to emanate from the very center of his chest.
We should have done away with this charade a long time ago, and just eliminated any species we find without even informing our citizens. This tournament is nothing but theatre, designed to make us feel better about the cleansing. We should forget the blockade and attack in secret.
Solivar's scales shifted color, darkening from their usual emerald to a deep forest green, a sign of displeasure among his kind. The overlapping plates along his neck flared slightly, revealing the sensitive pink flesh beneath.
Eliminating a species is a resource-intensive process, Ektol. You know it's impossible to do in secret. The energy residue alone would be detected by civilian vessels.
And my people love the tournament, Crinaro added, the amber swells in his body accelerating their dance. We would have civil unrest if it were cancelled. The entertainment value cannot be discounted. It keeps the population satisfied with the status quo.
The three fell silent, their attention drawn to the virtual 3D display in the center of the table. Both the scaled reptilian and the transparent Sargok leaned forward, their focus intense on the artificial reality that existed only through their implant translators. The sensory feed bypassed their natural receptors, creating a perfect illusion of presence within the area. The galactic Colosseum was packed to capacity, a swirling mass of bodies from across the galaxy. The crowd's composition somewhat matched the atmosphere of their little room. Almost all spectators were from Solivar and Crinaro's species. The reptilians occupied the lower tiers, their scales creating a mosaic of greens and blues that shifted with every movement of the crowd. The Sargok preferred the higher elevations, their transparent bodies refracting light, turning the upper galleries into a kaleidoscope of living flesh. Ektol's people, with their thick black fur and statuesque builds, were present only as a small delegation in one of the mid-level boxes. Unlike the others, they didn't cheer or wave banners. They sat with the same detached observation that Ektol himself displayed, as if attending not out of enjoyment but obligation.
Your people always seem so dour at these events,
Solivar remarked, his pupilless yellow eyes narrowing.
Yet I've noticed they've become quite engaged once the actual combat begins.
They appreciate the martial aspects, if not the spectacle,
Crinaro agreed, a wave of satisfaction crossing his transparent form.
Everyone enjoys violence when it's sanctioned and structured. It's in the nature of all sentient beings.
Ektol didn't dignify the comments with a response, his crimson eyes fixed on the arena floor as it transformed from a plain circle to an intricate battlefield. Terrain features rose from the ground, jagged rocks, shallow pools of liquid, and elevated platforms that offered tactical advantages to those quick enough to claim them. A Sargok announcer glided to the center of the arena, his transparent form enhanced with ceremonial pigments that turned his internal organs into a dazzling light show. His voice, amplified to reach every corner of the massive structure, silenced the crowd instantly. The vibrant colors shifted with each word, creating hypnotic patterns that mesmerized spectators, while simultaneously conveying complex emotional undertones that transcended mere verbal communications.
Esteemed citizens of the Galactic Alliance,
The announcer's voice resonated through the virtual feed with perfect clarity.
Today marks a special occasion in our cherished tradition of the extinction duels. Before us stands a 5-time champion species facing a challenger for the right to continue their existence.
The crowd erupted in a wave of cheers, stomps, and various species-specific expressions of excitement. The announcer raised his appendages, allowing the noise to crest before continuing.
These duels remind us of the natural order of the cosmos, that survival must be earned through strength and skill. Today's match carries particular significance, as the human species has won an unprecedented 5 consecutive bouts, hoping the blockade of their world would end.
A mixture of boos and cheers filled the arena. The humans were not popular among the Alliance species, their repeated successes creating an undercurrent of resentment.
Yet in a display of either supreme confidence or foolish arrogance, humanity has sent not their champion, but a mere recruit to fight for their continued existence.
The announcer's internal organs flashed with dramatic pulses of light.
They have grown so confident after 5 victories that they no longer see the need to send their best. Let this be a reminder that pride precedes extinction. It cannot be arrogance. Perhaps they finally recognize the inevitable. Perhaps they've seen through our game and chosen to accept their fate with dignity. The humans clearly know their fighting strength means nothing when facing our military power and strategic superiority.
Krynaro's body showed his skepticism, dark currents disrupting his usually smooth, fluid patterns.
I suspect they're plotting something. Many species have tried unusual strategies when backed into a corner. All have failed, of course, but humans have proven unpredictable.
The announcer's voice cut through their speculation.
Approaching from the Eastern Gate, representing the Quarak Federation, I present to you Tak Vashar, 4-armed champion of the Obsidian Pits, undefeated in 17 challenges in his home world, crusher of bones and spirits alike, evolved in the crushing depths of methane seas, where pressure builds warriors worthy of our most sacred combat traditions.
The eastern gate of the arena parted with a thunderous rumble, and a massive figure emerged through clouds of atmospheric enhancers designed to create a dramatic entrance. Tak Vashar stood nearly 9 feet tall, his brown skin thick and leathery like ancient tree bark. 4 powerfully muscled arms extended from a torso that seemed carved from solid rock, each limb ending in 3-fingered hands with black talons that could shred metal. His yellow eyes burned with primal determination beneath a heavy brow ridge covered in ceremonial scarification. The Korak champion wore minimal armor, only strategic plates protecting vital areas, leaving most of his imposing physique exposed as a display of confidence. Each step Tak Vashar took left small indentations in the arena floor, an obvious proof of his incredible density and mass. He raised all 4 arms to the crowd, eliciting a roar of approval that shook the virtual sensors. When he reached the center, the announcer handed him a sonic amplifier.
"I stand before you as the shield of my species."
Tak Vashar's voice boomed across the arena, deep and resonant like distant thunder.
"I will not dishonor my people or their trust. I will crush this human opponent, claim another decade of life for the Quarak, and end the panic that has gripped our homeworld since we were discovered by the Alliance. My victory is assured by the 4 moons of Korra and the strength they have blessed me with."
He punctuated his speech by slamming his 4 fists together in a thunderous display of power, sending shockwaves through the arena floor. The crowd responded with deafening approval, particularly the reptilian sections, who appreciated displays of raw strength. And now, the announcer continued after the noise subsided, approaching from the Western Gate, representing the planet Earth and its single colony on their moon, the human contestant. The Western Gate slid open with considerably less fanfare than its counterpart. The figure that emerged caused a wave of murmurs to sweep through the crowd. Unlike the massive Korak or the previous human champions, who had all been specimens of peak physical conditioning, this human was lean and unremarkable. Of average height for their species, perhaps 5.5 feet tall, with a build that suggested some athletic training but nothing extraordinary. Brown hair cut in a utilitarian style framed a face that appeared young, even by human standards. The contestant wore a simple grey uniform with blue accents, the standard garb of a training recruit, rather than the specialized combat gear of a veteran warrior. The contrast between this human and humanity's previous champions was impossible to ignore. Where those champions had exuded confidence and martial prowess, this one walked with a quiet, almost reluctant gait. The crowd fell into a stunned silence, then erupted in jeers and mockery. When the human reached the center and was handed the sonic amplifier, the spectators quieted, curious despite their disdain. Everyone expected the typical human bravado, the speeches about determination and the indomitable human spirit that had characterized previous contests. Instead, the human looked directly into the yellow eyes of Tark Vashar. There was no fear in the human's gaze, but something far more unexpected. Compassion. When the human spoke, the voice was clear and unwavering. I'm, sorry your species was found by the Alliance and forced into this fight. I wish things could be different. That was all. No grand declarations, no promises of war, no appeal to the crowd, just a few words that fell like stones into still water. The silence that followed lasted only moments before the crowd erupted in outrage. This wasn't the entertainment they had come for. Objects began flying toward the arena floor, food containers, program materials, and other detritus raining down in the display of a collective disappointment. In their observation room, the 3 Alliance leaders stared at the virtual projection with varying degrees of surprise.
"What kind of speech was that?"
Solivar hissed, his scales rippling with confusion.
"Previous human champions gave rousing addresses about courage and human spirit. They played to the crowd, even as they surely knew their species was doomed in the long run."
"Perhaps they've finally broken,"
Krynaro suggested, dark currents of suspicion swirling through his transparent form.
5 victories might have shown them the futility of their situation. They win a decade. They must fight again, perpetually.
Ektol's ears twitched forward, his full attention engaged for the first time.
"Or perhaps they're plotting something."
His voice was so low that his colleagues had to lean in to hear him over the crowd's continuing disapproval.
"What other way could there possibly be?"
Solivar scoffed, but a note of uncertainty had crept into his tone.
"Nothing they can do can provide them with any chance against us."
In the arena, the announcer had finally managed to restore order, his amplified voice cutting through the chaos. "Citizens of the Alliance! The time for words has ended. Now we witness the true test. As always, combat that will determine the fate of an entire species." The virtual projection zoomed in on the center of the arena, where Tark Vashar towered over the human recruit. The Korak's 4 arms flexed in anticipation, muscles tense beneath his brown hide. The human stood still, making no move to adopt a fighting stance or to retreat to a more advantageous position among the terrain features. "Contestants, to your positions!" the announcer commanded, floating backward to the edge of the combat zone. "The 16th extinction duel of the Alliance will commence in 3! Tark Vashar spread his forearms wide, each hand curling into a lethal fist. 2! The human remained motionless, eyes still fixed on the Korak's face. 1! The crowd leaned forward as one entity, a collective breath held in anticipation. Fight! The Korak champion lunged forward with surprising speed for his size, all four arms moving in a coordinated attack pattern that had likely felled countless opponents in the obsidian pits of his homeworld. His yellow eyes blazed with the certainty of imminent victory. The human didn't move. The Korak champion's four fists sliced through empty air as the human recruit sidestepped with unexpected agility. It wasn't the graceful movement of a trained warrior, but something else entirely, the fluid motion of someone who had no intention of engaging in combat at all. Before Tark Vashar could reorient himself for another attack, the human did something no contestant in the history of the extinction duels had ever done. The recruit turned away from his opponent, facing the crowd directly. With a clear, unwavering voice that carried throughout the arena without the need for amplification, he announced, "I forfeit this match. The Korak champion is the winner." Absolute silence descended upon the arena. The crowd, moments ago a roiling sea of excitement, froze in collective bewilderment. In the private observation room, the three Alliance leaders stared at the projection, equally stunned. Ektol's ears moved forward, his crimson eyes widening. Solivar's scales shifted to a pale, almost colourless shade, the reptilian equivalent of shocked disbelief. Krynaro's transparent form became utterly still, the flowing patterns within him momentarily suspended as if time itself had stopped.
Did he just...
Solivar couldn't even complete the question. In the arena, the Korak champion lowered his arms, confusion evident in his yellow eyes. He looked to the announcer for guidance, but the Sargok official appeared equally perplexed, his translucent body cycling through a kaleidoscope of conflicting colour patterns. There was no protocol for this scenario. In the centuries that the extinction duels had been conducted, no species had ever voluntarily forfeited. It was unimaginable that any sentient race would willingly accept defeat and subsequent destruction. The concept ran counter to the very biological imperative of survival that the duels exploited. The silence stretched for what seemed like eternity before the announcer finally glided forward, his voice lacking its usual bombastic confidence. "Citizens of the Alliance, we are experiencing an unprecedented situation. I must consult the ancient rules." He gestured frantically to the arena guards, who immediately moved to form a barrier between the crowd and the dueling floor. "Please remain calm while we determine the proper procedure." The crowd began to stir, murmurs of confusion rippling through the assembled species. The guards, imposing figures from all three Alliance races, took up positions around the perimeter, their weapons not yet drawn but visibly ready. The atmosphere in the arena had transformed from entertainment to something tense and potentially volatile. In their private chamber, the leader's virtual display shifted as an overlay appeared, an incoming communication from the arena's announcer. The three exchanged knowing glances. Under normal circumstances, their involvement would be limited to ceremonial observation. Direct intervention was exceptionally rare, reserved for situations that threatened the carefully constructed illusion of fairness that maintained social order. Ektol leaned forward, his black fur bristling with tension.
"We need to address this immediately."
The announcer's transparent form materialized in their virtual space, his usual confident bearing replaced by panic. "Esteemed leaders, forgive the interruption, but we have no precedent for this situation. The human has forfeited, but the rules make no provision for voluntary surrender. The crowd is growing restless, and I fear we may have a riot if clear direction isn't provided soon." Solivar's scales darkened with irritation.
Could this be deliberate sabotage? Perhaps the humans realized their defeat was inevitable and chose this method to damage our social control systems out of spite.
"A final act of defiance,"
Crinaro agreed, dark currents swirling through his transparent form.
They sacrifice themselves, but undermine the spectacle that keeps our populations compliant.
Ektol's crimson eyes narrowed, his analytical mind already several steps ahead of his colleagues.
The damage is already done, he stated flatly. We should proceed as we always have with defeated species. Give the humans the standard loser's speech, but with one difference. Have the surviving champion deliver it himself, rather than an alliance representative.
Solivar nodded, his scales shifting back to their normal emerald hue.
Yes, that would help maintain some semblance of normalcy. The public will accept it if the winner and the loser speaks the traditional words.
It preserves the core ritual while adapting to these unusual circumstances,
Crinaro concurred, the fluid patterns within him stabilizing into more organized flows.
The spectacle continues, albeit in a modified form.
They turned to the announcer's projection, who bowed in acknowledgement. I will implement your decision immediately, esteemed leaders. The overlay disappeared, replaced once more by the virtual projection of the arena. The announcer was returning to the center of the stage, all eyes, both in the arena and in the observation chamber, fixed upon him.
Citizens of the Galactic Alliance! The announcer's voice had regained some of its theatrical confidence. After consultation with the ancient texts, we have determined that the Korok champion has indeed earned his species another decade of existence.
He paused for effect, allowing a wave of relieved applause to wash through the crowd.
The human submission constitutes recognition of defeat, and as is tradition, their champion will be permitted a final address before the blockade fleet becomes the cleansing fleet.
The crowd's reaction was mixed, relief that the familiar pattern would continue, but rage at being denied the violence they had anticipated. Objects again flew toward the arena floor, though the security forces intercepted most before they could reach their targets. Reptilian spectators hissed their disapproval, tails lashing against seats. The transparent Sargok in the upper tiers glowed with bright, angry colors that turned their section into a chaotic light show of disappointment. Even Ektol's normally reserved species were showing signs of agitation, their fur bristling visibly even from a distance. In the center of the arena, Tark Vashar fell to his knees, all four arms spread wide in an expression of gratitude. Tears streamed down his leathery face, carving glistening trails through the ceremonial markings on his cheeks. His massive frame shook with emotion, the enormity of what he had been given, the salvation of his entire species for another decade, overwhelming him completely. The human recruit stepped forward, accepting the sonic amplifier from the announcer. Unlike the Korak's emotional display, the human's face remained composed, almost serene. He waited until the crowd's noise had diminished to a dull roar before raising the amplifier to his lips.
"Humanity is lost,"
he began simply. The arena fell silent, the unexpected candor of the statement catching the audience off guard. After a long pause, during which only scattered boos could be heard, he continued.
"But we didn't lose today. We lost the moment we were found by your evil alliance."
The words lingered in the air, an open acknowledgement of what was rarely spoken aloud. In their observation chamber, Ektol exchanged glances with his colleagues. The human was stating what every subjugated species surely knew, but never dared articulate publicly. That the extinction duels were rigged from the start, designed not to give young species a chance, but to eliminate them with a veneer of legitimacy. The human's voice drew their attention back to the projection.
"I want to tell you a secret,"
he continued, his voice gaining strength.
"Humanity wasn't planning to send anyone to this duel. We knew it would be a useless sacrifice, as our champion had no chance of returning alive. But I couldn't allow all of you to exist without hearing the truth from your leaders. So, I volunteered my life for this speech. You better listen carefully to what I have to say."
In their private chamber, the three leaders exchanged concerned glances.
Should we cut him off?
Solovar hissed, his scales oscillating between green and black with agitation. Krynaro's transparent form rippled with uncertainty.
That might cause more damage. The crowd is already on edge. Silencing him now would only confirm his accusations.
Let him speak, Ektol said quietly. The damage is contained to this single event.
On the arena floor, the human continued. Humanity never truly believed winning these duels would save us. We understood that from the moment first contact happened, approximately 5 decades ago. Our greatest minds, in a worldwide effort, concluded we had no chance of winning by playing by the Alliance's rules. We also determined that producing weapons that could give us a fighting chance would be impossible within decades. We would need a few centuries. In the observation chamber, the council members exchanged glances of relief. This was nothing they didn't already know. On a galactic scale, a few decades meant nothing at all. No matter how rapidly a species advanced, there was virtually no chance for newcomers to defeat an established power like the Alliance within such a short time frame. The human's voice grew stronger, addressing the crowd, but somehow making the 3 leaders feel as though he was speaking directly to them. Despite these odds, we did not give up. We devised a plan with a small chance of success that required us to play the Alliance's sick game, temporarily. We needed to win enough time to construct something while the galaxy thought we were focusing solely on these fights. Solovar and Krynaro exchanged worried glances, while Ektol's ears flattened against his skull, a sign of heightened alertness among his kind. At this very moment, the human announced, his voice ringing through the arena, humanity has launched thousands of ships simultaneously from hidden facilities across our system. These vessels are scattering in different directions across the galaxy, carrying human populations from Earth and our colonies. Alongside them, we've launched many more uncrewed decoys that will ensure at least some of our ships can break through your encirclement of the solar system and disappear into the vast wilderness of the galaxy. Ektol slammed his fist onto the table in disbelief, a sentiment reflected in the faces of his colleagues.
Verify this immediately,
Solovar barked into the air, the command automatically routed to Alliance military channels. Within moments, tactical overlays began appearing around their virtual display, showing the Sol system in chaos. Alliance blockade ships were indeed struggling to contain a swarm of vessels erupting from not just Earth, but seemingly every planet, moon, and asteroid in the system. Most were small, fast, and practically unarmed. Not warships, but escape craft designed for evasion rather than combat. The tactical display showed thousands of heat signatures blossoming like a sudden supernova across the entire system, overwhelming the careful blockade that had been maintained for decades. Alliance military commanders were frantically requesting instructions. Their usual measured communications now hurried and disorganized as the carefully constructed containment dissolved into chaos.
How did they conceal this?
Krynaro demanded, his transparent form pulsing with agitation.
Our surveillance was comprehensive.
Underground facilities,
Ektol muttered, his analytical mind piecing together the strategy.
Distributed manufacturing, compartmentalized knowledge. They've been preparing for this since their first victory, perhaps even before. The ships must be intercepted,
Solovar hissed, his claws digging into the table.
All of them. There are too many,
Ektol observed, studying the tactical displays.
And they're using the primitive FTL. Some will escape, perhaps many.
The 3 leaders were so engrossed in their crisis that they momentarily forgot about the human champion still addressing the crowd. When they returned their attention to the main projection, the recruit was nearing the end of his speech. Unfortunately, you will still live long lives, he was saying, his voice calm despite the gravity of his words. You need not worry about being killed in your sleep. Humanity will hide in many new worlds where we can never be found. But know this, we will lay low and gather strength." The human turned slowly, his gaze seeming to find the hidden observation cameras, and through them, the three Alliance leaders themselves. "Unlike you, we will hold no tournaments in the future. When we return, our attack will be singular. It will show no mercy and leave no chance for hope. One day, we will grow strong enough to take this galaxy from your dark forest and transform it into something better."
"Enough!"
Solivar roared, his scales nearly black with rage.
"Execute him immediately!"
The command was relayed instantly to the arena guards, who surged forward, weapons drawn. The human made no move to resist as they surrounded him, forming a circle of gleaming armor and leveled weapons. But before they could strike, he raised his voice one final time, ensuring his last words would echo throughout the arena and beyond. "Remember this day! Remember that you were warned. Unlike you, we will not play games with extinction. We will not offer false hope or staged combat. When humanity returns from the darkness you forced us into, we will come as a cleansing fire. And on that day, there will be no duels, no champions, no spectacles, only quick and final justice." The guards closed in, their weapons glowing with lethal energy. The human stood tall, facing his end with the same calm determination he had shown throughout. His final expression was not one of fear or defiance, but something the observers found far more disturbing. The serene smile of someone who knew that even in death they had accomplished their purpose. In their private chamber, the three Alliance leaders watched in silence as the human was executed. The crowd's reaction was muted, confused, the usual bloodthirsty satisfaction of the duels replaced by an unsettling uncertainty.
"This changes nothing,"
Solivar declared, but his voice lacked conviction.
"A primitive species scattering like vermin across the galaxy means nothing. We will hunt them down, eventually."
"Of course," Krynaro agreed, though the patterns within his transparent form betrayed his unease. "They have no technology to threaten us. This is merely an inconvenience." Only Ektol remained silent, his crimson eyes fixed on the fading tactical displays that showed human vessels disappearing into the depths of space, heading in all directions, some already beyond tracking range. His long ears lay flat against his skull as a realization formed in his mind. For the first time in many millennia, a new variable had been introduced into the carefully managed equilibrium of the Alliance's dominance. The universe was indeed a dark forest, as he had always believed, but now, somewhere in that darkness, a new predator was hiding, not yet dangerous, wounded perhaps, but with the potential to grow into something that even the Alliance might one day fear. And unlike the Alliance, this new predator would not announce its presence with spectacle and ceremony. When it was ready to strike back,